Hello and welcome. So today I'm going to show you how you can use a table, which is basically just a variable to store multiple values in Roblox Studio. So I'm here in a default baseplate world, and I'm going to create a script to show you what a table is. So basically, a table is just a normal variable that can store multiple values. And you make it by using two curly braces right here. And so you can put whatever you want. You can put a boolean, a string, and even a function. I'll show you that right now. So here we have a function. Just gonna say print hello world. And you can even store this function here. But make sure to get rid of the parentheses, or that will cause syntax error. So this is the most basic kind of table. It's called an array. And so in order to access the values held within this table, you have to find its index. And in Lua, each of these variables is assigned an index from 1 to the size of the array. So this would be an index of 1, this would be an index of 2, and this would be an index of 3. So if I ever want to access whatever is held within my table, I have to do my table and then make sure to put brackets to index it and 1. So what I could do with this is I could print it out. Here we go. Let's run this. Prints true. So it shows what's in our table. And if you want to run a function, you would do my table, whatever. Let's do 3 because that's where the function is. And then you put parentheses. So this is basically doing the same thing as saying my function, like that. These are synonymous. These two statements do the exact same thing. So I can show you there. See, and you can see the little 2x, which means it's printed hello world twice. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so what you can also do with tables is go through each of their values. This is called iteration. There are two ways to iterate through an array, pairs or I-pairs. I'll show you, and this is in combination with a for loop. So I'll give you an example of each. So for the index value in I-pairs, my table 2. So what this is doing is it runs through each of the values in my table and it returns the index, which is these numbers, and the value of that index, which would be these things. And you can also see up here I've added two extra items to this array, nil and the string. And so with I-pairs, when I-pairs will iterate until it finishes the whole table, goes through each of its values, or it reaches something like nil. And so the benefit of I-pairs is it always gives you the items in the array in the order that you declared them in. So just to show you, I can do print the index and do the index, print value, do the value. So I run this. This is the first thing, so it's index 1, true, and index 2, which is hello, so true, hello, my function. This is just like the ID for the function, don't worry about it. And it stops at nil. But if I use pairs, and pairs my table, do print index, and then index, print value, value. And most of the time, actually what I do is I would change this either to like I for index or X, just like another variable name, because most of the time you don't really use this, but you want it to be short and concise because you already know what it's doing. It's over here. You know it's the index. But for whatever is stored in this table, this is what I put here. So if it's a table of players, I do for I player and pairs, whatever. But if it's like a table for parts, I'll do for I part and pairs, whatever. So if I run this, you can see, stop this, you can see that the I pairs finishes at index 3, while the pairs finishes at index 5. And honestly, I've never used I pairs. I've always used pairs, and it's worked fine for me. But just know there's two options here for what you can do to iterate through an array. Okay, so now on to the second type of table, which is known as a dictionary. So in a dictionary, it also uses the curly braces. You have keys and values, not indexes and values. An array uses indexes and values. So what a key and a value looks like is a key could be something like this key equals hello, and then something like that key equals 1. So along with tables, dictionaries can store booleans, strings, integers, decimals, functions, whatever you want. So this is what it looks like here. And in order to reference something in that dictionary, I'll show you with a print statement. Dictionary, and also using curly, actually not curly, square brackets, you can do this key. So with something like this, which is known as a string key, you always do brackets and then the string. So if I were to run this, prints hello. For the sake of this video, I'm going to comment out these print statements so they don't clutter the output. By the way, if you use Control-Shift-C on a highlighted selection, it will comment it or toggle the comment. So it's a very, very useful shortcut. And another way to index these string keys and dictionaries is by using a period. So it'd be dictionary dot this key. This does the exact same thing. And if this looks sort of familiar, this is what Lua uses for classes. Other programming languages like Java have a specific like variable type called a class, and it can hold like variables, functions, whatever. Lua uses tables instead, and there's a whole host of options to implement this like a class in Lua. But we won't get into that. So you can see these print the same exact things because they're doing the same thing. Also, if you can use a like part. So let me just make a part here. You can use a part as, or like an instance or whatever, as a key. So if I do local part equals workspace dot part, I can, in order to put a instance, which is like a part, a script or whatever, not just a string, in a dictionary, you have to use brackets in the declaration. So you can do part equals 10. So if I print this dictionary part, it'll print out 10. So that's the basics of finding a value in dictionary. What we can also do is reassign the value. So find dictionary dot this key. And by the way, I always use the period when I can. It's just a lot less cluttered than the brackets, and it looks a lot cleaner. So I could assign this to goodbye. If I print this out, print dictionary dot this key, it prints out goodbye because we change it. So this just changes it. It reassigns it. Okay, so in order to iterate through a dictionary, it's the same process as an array. Difference is its key values, not index values. And you can't use I pairs because, as the I indicates, it's index. That's a good way to remember it. Like you only use I pairs with arrays because arrays have indexes, I pairs, and dictionaries do not. They have keys. So if I do local dictionary, or if I reference this dictionary, I can iterate through it. So I can print key is this, and then value is this. One sec. Value is this. If I run it, okay. That's just a concatenation issue because we're trying to print apart and it doesn't like that. Let's just change these. There you go. So we have the key is this key, value hello, key is that key, value 1, key part, value 10. So exactly what it says here. You can iterate through a dictionary. Dictionaries are very, very useful. I use dictionaries a lot more than I use arrays. They work very well. So there's also a very useful class in Lua called a table class. And what this class can do is I use it mostly for arrays. You can insert values at the end of an array. You can remove values. You can sort values in an array. I never use that, but you can. You can see all the functions here. You can create an array. You can use a special type of loop. If you want more information about these, I will link the table documentation from Roblox in the description. So let's use the most basic one, table to insert. What this does, it takes two parameters, the table that you want to use and the value that you want to insert, and it pops the value at the end. And you can also see I got rid of the nil here because it doesn't really go well with these functions because if it finds nil, it'll just like stop iterating if you need to find something. And so if I print my table, and then it'll be an index. This is the index of 4. So it'll be an index of 5 because it's not there yet. We haven't implemented it yet, but it'll be there after we do table.insert. So if you run this, you can see that it prints new. So that's good. Now, if we want to remove a value, you can use table.remove. The problem with table.remove is that it needs to take in an index. So the parameters would be my table and index of 5, for example. Most of the time, however, you're not going to know what index it is because you're adding values to tables, you're changing those values, like unless you iterate through the table itself and check, oh, is this value the value I want, it doesn't work. So what you can use, you can use another table function called table.find. So index equals table.find. So this function takes two parameters once again, the table that you want and the value that you want to find. And so if it finds this value, it will return the index of it. If it doesn't, it'll return nil. So what we can do with this is you can, if you want to remove this value, use table.find to get the index, which is right here. and then use table.remove to remove that index. So if I were to print my table 5 again, it'll print no. So it prints new, then we get rid of it, and it prints no. Also, another very useful table function called table.unpack. And what table.unpack does is it separates the indexes and the values, or just takes away the values from the table. So it changes a table into a collection of values. So this is really useful either when you want to print out a table or find the highest value in a table, because there's a function called math.max and math.min, which can only be applied to a bunch of numbers. If you can see down here, the parameters are number x, number whatever. It just keeps on going. And if you put a table under there, it won't do anything. So you have to do table.unpack whatever table you want. So let's do my table. So what this will do is it'll print out all of the values in a table, which is very useful for bug testing if you want to see what's in your arrays. Or if you want, you can also use one of these loops to loop through a table and then print everything out. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some real-life implementation of tables in Roblox. So one of the most useful and most frequent ways you'll use your knowledge of tables is by going through the children of an object. So I can get the children of the workspace by doing local children equals workspace get. I have to spell that correctly. Workspace get children. So a child is anything that's like parented to the workspace. So anything that's sort of indented in the Explorer. And this is good for like organizing. You put things as childs and like models and folders and whatever. And so what get children does is returns a list of all of the things that are parented to whatever object you're using. Right now I'm using workspace. You can use this part. It won't return anything since there's nothing in there. And what you can do is you can iterate through these children by doing for I child in pairs children to print child dot name. So this just prints the name. All of these have a name property, like every instance does, and it'll just show you what's inside of it. And this is very useful when you are going through a model, for example, and you want to change all of the colors of a part, or you want to change the transparencies of like every part in that model. And another way you can use this is by doing game.players get players. This will return a list of all of the active players in the session. So local players equals game.players get players. I can do for I player in pairs players to print player.name. So what this will do, print all the player names. It didn't do anything because this snippet of code runs before my player loads in. So if I add a little bit of a delay, like let's say 10 seconds, well actually, I have to add the delay before I actually get the children. So I can add the delay right here. If we wait 10 seconds, it should print my name, which is, let's redraw it right here. Let's give it some time. Here you go. So it prints my name. So more players, it'll print more things. This is very useful if you want to award all the players some coins, or if you want to figure out which player, which group of players is like winning your game, or who should die, or stuff like that. So you have complete control with your use of tables. So yeah, that's a basic overview for tables. One thing I forgot to mention is that in order to find the number of items in the table, you can do hashtag or pound or whatever you want, and then the table name. So if I do my table, this will give me the amount of items in my table. So actually, there's that 10-second delay. Let's get rid of that. We don't really need these. So we're gonna comment it out. That's wrong button. Comment it out. Comment it out. And then should run. Pretty well. So we have 4 items in the table, my table. And you can see there's 4 items. And also remember that we deleted the other item. And yeah, that's basically it for tables. Stay tuned for another video where I talk about meta tables, which are very powerful uses of tables where you can implement that with module scripts, which should be pretty cool, and inheritance, which is very useful if you want to keep your code nice and clean. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.